Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Monday Mindset. I hope you've had a fabulous weekend. I hope you are ready for another work week if that's what you're doing this week. If you're just not and you're laying on the beach somewhere, Kevin and I are really jealous. So,
Don't let us know. We don't want to
no,
know.
don't tell us if you're doing that. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I am lovely. Tracy, happy Monday. How are things?
Things are great. I had a really lazy kind of Netflix weekend. I did do a few other things in that. But how about you? How was yours?
I was good. Good. Got some time with friends, boys basketball games, got a nap in, which is always great. Have a Sunday afternoon nap. It was kind of a gray Sunday around here in Oklahoma City. So perfect for a Sunday afternoon nap. Got a few runs in, got some rest and recharge. So it was great. Ready for the day, ready for the week.
Well, very cool. Very cool. Well, I don't want to, again, take much time just between the two of us. Not that it's not time worthy, you and me, but like last week, we have an amazing guest, and she's just a favorite of both of ours, I know. And so I went to introduce her to the rest of the world that do not know her yet. She is a one of a kind. So I will let you do all that. I'm going to bring her on. I'm going to go off. I'm going to just kind of watch the chat. And so if you're here with us from LinkedIn or Facebook, or if you're on the GiANT platform, we welcome you, and we welcome questions and comments as Suzi is being interviewed and telling about her healthy mindset, because she certainly does have one. So also, if you're kind of new to us and you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the GiANT platform, know that we have an amazing leadership platform that is free to you. The free part of it is called Ascend. And so if you want to be a part of that, you can sign up, and we'll tell you later on where to go, especially in order to connect with Suzi. So I'm off. You guys, you and Suzi have fun. Hi, Suzi, and goodbye.
Hey, Tracy. Bye. Good to see you.
All right.
Hey, Kevin.
Good morning. Friends, we've got the great Suzi Lantz. So Suzi, let me tell you a little bit about Suzi. She's a track star. From what I understand, they called her the Usain Bolt of Ohio. She has worked in education. She's worked in healthcare. She's worked in church planning. She's one of our amazing giants. She serves in Ohio, a number of organizations from a variety of sectors. And she's someone you want to follow. She's someone that you want to learn from. Suzi, welcome to Monday Mindset.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Kevin, and the great Suzi Lantz. I saw that tag yesterday on Facebook, and I said, I'm going to make my kids call me the great Suzi Lantz all week long. So already my mindset's good,
That's right. Doesn't matter what's going on. When kids refer to you as the great Suzi Lantz, it's hard to have a bad day.
That's right.
All right, Suzi. So I want to it's Monday Mindset. So we're going to talk about mindset, and we've kind of been around each other for the last, I guess, 4 years in the GiANT world, and you have an infectious mindset, an infectious personality that draws people to you, and it's not an accident, right? Mindset, we talk about this all the time. We don't get a healthy mindset on accident. So we're just going to jump right into it. How has mindset and this understanding of mindset impacted your life? And then part two, when did you start to realize that? When did that start to become an intentional thing for you?
Yeah. Well, I think, mindset really is everything. What your perception is becomes your reality. And, I know this full well. You mentioned that I was a track and fields athlete. I don't know if star is the right, definitely not Usain Bolt. I was more of a middle distance person, but healthy mindset started developing way back then, and unfortunately I had a bout of unhealthy mindset that, because of it, really made me think about the power of our thoughts and what can happen if we really aren't aware of them. All through high school, I had some success in track and field and cross country, but unfortunately, it really did a number on my mind, and I began to, just look at all the other runners that had, just these long, I'm a 5'1" person. And so I was running against these tall string bean type athletes. And I would look and say, I don't look like that. I probably need to lose some weight. I probably need to be skinnier. And it started this spiral of not feeling good enough, not being enough. It didn't matter how much success I had. I was still self-deprecating and really doing a number just because I was listening to lies in my own brain about my self-worth and about who I was. And so fortunately, as I went to college, I had the privilege to get a scholarship and run for the great Jack Hazen. He is notorious. He's in his 54th year of coaching at Malone University. Has been an Olympic track and field coach, just brilliant man. And under his coaching and with a great team, and honestly, with God's help, my mindset began to grow a lot healthier about really who I was. And it was then I realized that the things you believe about yourself become reality. And so one of the first steps was understanding who I was and really having an identity that I could feel confident in, that I knew, what were my strengths and how was I different than other people? And so honestly, it's been a lifelong quest. I'm an identical twin. I loved that Tracy called me one of a kind. And yes, I am, but I also have an identical twin who looks a whole lot like me. And, that was such a blessing. And honestly, in some ways, it stunted my ability to really know who I am as an individual. So in my adult life, I really had to figure out, who am I? What are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Because I realized I was allowing a lot of my weaknesses, or what we would call in GiANT our fourth and fifth voice.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be better than I was at those things. And as a result, I would, not be as confident in the things I was good at. And so it caused some frustration and some growing pains. But yeah, what we believe about who we are makes all the difference in how we
right? It shapes who we become, but how we show up, what shapes
Absolutely.
who we become. And that identity piece, I love that you talked about that, because everything I think flows from, like, all of our behaviors flow from our identity.
Absolutely.
Whether we think we're good enough or bad enough, like who we think we are shapes how we, and if I'm too short, I'm too whatever. And we play that comparison game. Sure. And it's like, no. Like I'm believing lies about my identity, or looking at just the weaknesses of my identity, which we all have weaknesses, right? That's part of it. Instead of saying, wait a minute, what are my advantages? Right? We compare ourselves to other people, which, the famous quote, comparison is the thief of joy, and which destroys our mindset. And so I love that you spoke about the identity piece. I think that's so critical. So let's talk about, you took that lessons from the track and brought those into life, into marriage, into business, into how you interact with people, into teaching, into building. How do you help people understand the power of mindset? How do you help transfer that? Because it's such a difficult thing, which I think is really critical for leaders to be able to do that. But it's a really difficult thing.
Yeah. So I feel like one of the most important foundational steps that I had to learn was that if you want to achieve success in life, if you want to be free and healthy and have that great mindset, you've got to fight for your own highest good. Don't expect anybody else to do it for you. Now, I'm not demonizing the rest of the world, because people have great intentions, right? And they can be such a great asset to you. If you were fortunate enough to have incredible parents like I do, or, a good boss, or a great coach, or a great spouse, good for you. But I think often in life, we expect people to fight for us, to set up our culture, our world. And when we don't experience success, when we don't experience freedom, when we find ourselves struggling, it's real quick to blame. Well, my boss isn't, really setting up a great leadership culture for me, so of course I'm struggling. Or I didn't get that opportunity because my coach wouldn't put me in. Well, what did you do in the off season? So I think that was a foundational lesson, that as much as I had support around me, it was up to me to decide. And it came from a little practice I used to do right before big important meets, the district meets, regionals, where it was one or done. I would go off away from my team, and I'd find a mirror, a window, something that I could find a reflection in. And I would just know that I had to prepare myself mentally for that big race, that I had to chase down any fear, any insecurity, and know that when I stepped on that track, I was ready to win. And that little practice, as I began, to go further into my adult life, I realized I need spaces like that. I can't wait for somebody else to pump me up or to believe in me. I need to have regular times where I'm able to look at myself in the mirror, so to speak. That's why I love the GiANT tools. They're always just giving us a look in the mirror and just saying, is there any doubt? Is there any insecurity? Where's the self-preservation? And let's chase that away, so that you can go out and be free and offer your best.
Well, I love that because you're always training for something.
Sure.
Right? Like we were training for track, whether it's a sport, whether it's business, whether it's whatever, you're always training for something. And you get in that moment, you are fully prepared to run those meets.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you win, right? We can't control outcomes, but you prepared to go compete. Well, that's half the battle, right? Like the other, maybe not even half the battle. That's just part of the battle. Most of the battle is that mental preparation, which is where people fall apart because they were prepared physically. They weren't prepared mentally. They didn't train mentally to be able to go compete when the lights were on or when it mattered. And so I think, for us and for our actions and our habits, like, what are you training for? And are your habits actually consistent with that? So because you're going to face adversity. And so now let's kind of look at that of mindset shapes how we get through adversity or whether or not we get through adversity. Right. So talk through maybe some times in life, and it could have been track, could have been business, could have been whatever, where you hit a wall. There was an obstacle. There was something you had to get through or you were down. It's like, but how you respond to that matters and what you've learned from those responses.
Absolutely. I think back to our early days of marriage. We got pregnant unexpectedly. We were financially strapped, like, a lot of young newlyweds were. And in the same season, my father-in-law was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so 3 things that were just, dumped on us as young kids who were just trying to figure ourselves out came all at once. And, I remember those years and thinking back to how did we maintain a healthy mindset. I was teaching and coaching at the time. My husband's a pastor, and our lives were for other people. And when that's the case, when your day job really is pouring into other people, you don't have the luxury to just hide in a corner and cry. And so, one of my favorite books, favorite authors, and it kind of came into my life during that time. I was teaching, and I would always do a 6-week unit on the Holocaust. And we'd look at Holocaust literature, memoirs, and Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian psychiatrist. I'm sure, many of the listeners have heard of him. He was brilliant because he really looked at mindset. He was able to help a lot of people after that experience because he survived. But when you look at, his concepts and really what he found made the difference, because as a psychiatrist, he was studying the prisoners in the camps, which ones were making it and which ones were giving in to defeat and despair. And, obviously the circumstances were horrible. They were not fair. No person would say, well, that's life sometimes. It was horrible. Most of us are not going to experience that degree of suffering. But there were, 4 things that he really looked at when it came to mindset of these prisoners that made the difference. And the first was, purposeful work. Do you have a reason to get out of bed every day? And so it's so vital that we know that what we do, the work that we're spending time to do, actually matters to somebody. Like, how is it making a difference in our world? The overarching concept is love. Are there people in your life that you are actively loving, that you care about deeply, that are treasures to you, that your life is about, and vice versa? Are you experiencing that? Are you connected, or have you isolated yourself to a place where you don't have those relationships? And then the third was finding meaning in suffering, being able to reframe it. He noticed that the prisoners that actually could survive were able to look at the horrible atrocities they were going through and actually think through what it might do if they survived and could get out and tell their story and let people know what was happening. They had a will to make it, to realize that their suffering could maybe prevent the suffering of others, or that they could make a difference by getting their message out that this is happening. They needed the world to know. And then the last one, and I love this because I feel like in GiANT, we do this with our clients all the time. You have to have a why into the future, a goal that you're looking towards and want to reach. When you're going through adversity, when you're going through suffering, you have to be able to see what's up ahead and dream about it and see it and almost like picture it, so that in the midst of those difficult things, and I look at the sports world, without a championship at the end of the season, without nationals or a big, goal, why in the world would you go to 2-a-days? Why in the world would, I spend my time doing intervals on the track? If there's nothing to do it for in the midst of those hard practices or those hard workouts, you're tempted to just give up and be like, why am I doing this? this is horrible. I quit. Right. So I think, gosh, that book, if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, or for those of you that are listening, check it out, because it really can bring perspective, and just there's story after story in there that just makes you want to stay healthy in your mind.
Yeah, it's a top 10 for me. I read it actually for the first time in 2020. So
Oh, wow.
I had read it. I'd heard of it 100 times and finally decided to pick it up. And I think to your point, it's none of us are going to experience that. Oh, we have a mean boss, or we got laid off, or what? And I'm not trying to minimize this. He's like, life happens. There are difficulties.
Right.
But in the moment, we tend to like get in our own head, and it's almost a selfish thing. We make it all about us. And why is this happening to me? What? And it's like, your boss was mean to you today. And like, the man's search for meaning, right? Is that the name of the book? Yep. Yes. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Frankl. And he's how you spell the last name. But it's, we get in such this mental bubble. It's almost a victim mindset. Right. And it's like, no, they were in the Holocaust. Yeah. Like we're not ever going to face that. And to have that perspective, I had a mentor of mine this last year, we had a conversation. He said, your perspective determines your reality. So experience happens, right? Life happens. We can't control COVID. We can't control the industry. We can't control our friends, our coworkers, our boss, the economy, none of that. But we get to control our perspective, which determines whether or not. So a lot of people had a good 2020. Right. It was really tough, right? Like they faced hardships, but they had a perspective that allowed them to see the good in the midst of it, that shaped how they showed up in the midst of it. And so for us to realize, like, we make things much worse than they are. Right. Absolutely. Because we get in our own head and say, wait a minute, I need to have perspective. And the big one, I think for me in that list that we're all really good is that the why. It's like, you have to have that vision of where you're going, because otherwise it's despair. And we talk about this with a tool we use called the change equation. Like if there's no vision, your dissatisfaction turns to bitterness and despair. It's like, why am I actually getting up and showing up every morning? Here's a good question from Jasmine. How do you suggest that I find my why? Are there questions to ask myself? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think you want to look at goal setting, long-term, short-term, and I think that's where, you have to see what excites you. What are you all about? And I think it comes back to that identity piece. I know for me, I let a lot of people define my why for years of my life. And it's only been in really the last couple years, as I delved more into GiANT, really understood what a creative connector gets excited about, gets energy about, that I was able to think through, well, what is my why? My overarching why in life is I want my life to be about helping people genuinely overcome the obstacles, the barriers, so that they can really be who they were created to be. Like, that's my why. That's why I get out of bed in the day. But it took, honestly, a process. So Jasmine, I would say the long-term why of your life, if you're not quite there, it's a process. You got to start with, well, who are you and what do you care about? What gets you excited? Start taking inventory. When you find yourself doing something that you're like, oh, I just love that. Look what I was able to do. Take note of that. Ask your friends, ask your family, what do you see in me? How do I contribute? Because that why, and like what Viktor Frankl was really talking about, was find your purpose. How does your life matter? If you went away, who would miss you? Like, what would be the difference? And so even for those of you that maybe have been laid off or lost a job this year, or you're in transition, you can do something every single day that makes an impact, that affects somebody else, that helps the world become a better place, kinder place, cleaner place. Figure it out, because it really, when you have that purpose, it matters. So short term, yes, always have a why for what you're doing, what you're getting excited about. That's where focus and priorities really help us when it comes to that. And then celebrate it for sure. When you do achieve a goal, or you see a vision that you had come into reality, stop and take notice of it. Celebrate it with friends, because that just keeps us going. It keeps us excited to reach that next goal. So what would you say, Kevin?
No, I think that's really good. And I think the only thing I would add is that your why doesn't have to be your job. I think our culture really confuses maybe if you want to call it calling or purpose or why with vocation. And that can lead to bitterness. Like, well, why am I not getting paid to do the thing that I really care about? Well, maybe you're not supposed to. So we are like mine is, I think I'm on this planet to help people get better, to help them believe in themselves, to help them in giant language. I wouldn't have used this, but it's just kind of tied to who I am, like to help people unlock their potential. Right. I don't have to be a consultant to do that. I don't have to be a keynote speaker to do that. I could be in sales and do that. Sure. I could be a receptionist and do that. And so to realize like it may be part of your vocation, but it may just be how you operate within that. So don't necessarily get those two confused, because then you lose, if your identity or your why is tied up in your job itself and you lose that job, then you lose that sense of purpose. Like, no, like let's say you got laid off and part of your why is like, you just love serving people, to help them believe in themselves. You don't need a job to do that. Right? You can, just the way you interact with people. So I think that's one thing I would add. That's really good. Another question, which is kind of similar, but we have someone on LinkedIn says, I find myself trying to fill my own bucket through GiANT because it brings back purpose that I've lost. So what would you say to someone struggling with purpose? And I think it's similar, right? Find the things that fill you up. And I would say if you're finding purpose through GiANT, why? Like what about, like what specifically, and what about GiANT is what's stirring in you? What is that kind of, what embers are being stoked, the things are kind of coming alive in you? And I would even say, go back to when did you feel alive? When did you feel, you said you lost purpose. How would you described it a year ago or 5 years ago when you felt like you had that purpose, and what took it away? How would you answer this one?
Yeah, no, I think it's important just to take time and do an inventory all the time. I know, as I look back, life mapping is such a great thing to do, just to look back at the evolution of how different seasons of life. I know I'm raising 2 teenagers now. It's very different than when they were like 5 and 7, as compared to 14 and 16. You have to look at the seasons of your life and make the necessary changes as you go, in order to really stay in a place where you're like, yeah, I have purpose every day to get out of bed I think we're so busy in this culture. 2020 has been a blessing because it has stopped. It's given us that margin back, time to reflect. But it is so important that you take some inventory and just say, what needs to shift? What needs to adjust? How can I make some changes so that I do feel purposeful in my work, in my days, in, like you said, in your volunteering, in, just knowing what you bring to the table that brings you energy, and then how you can use that to be a gift to the world. Recently, I was a former educator. I love education. I thought, honestly, when I started my GiANT career, that was the niche that I was going to really focus on. And it didn't turn out that way. But I have this ability now. I'm serving on a board of a foundation where I really can help generate some funds and additional support and resources for teachers. And for me to bring some of the leadership that GiANT has just equipped me with to serve in that capacity, I have to tone myself down at board meetings because I get so excited about what we're doing. And yet, a couple of years ago, I don't think I would have had that same experience. And so it's looking at how have you changed as a person? What do you need to do? And sometimes it's stepping out and being a little bit brave to find yourself in a place where you can, really live out that purpose. So.
And I think too, it's this piece of mindset with adversity and purpose is what tends to happen is we face a little bit of adversity and we bail, or we decide, oh, that's not my why, or the world's working against me. It's like adversity is part of it. Like not to be insensitive. Like someone's got to put on your big boy pants and keep showing up. Like fight through it, battle it, and realize like it's going to be hard. Life is hard. Show up anyway. It's not just because you've got clear on your purpose doesn't mean things are now going to be easier. They're just a little bit clear. In fact, I'd probably argue the opposite. I think when you get clear on your why, things will get harder. Because now you're trying to live into that. And it's like all this resistance shows up. It's like it's a battle. Yeah. And the other piece you hit on, I think, is really, really, really key, is that busyness is the enemy of pretty much everything. It's the enemy of mindset. It's the enemy of perspective. It's the enemy of connection. It's the enemy of purpose. Because we don't slow down. Like the answers you've had to those 2 questions have involved some form of sitting and processing and reflecting. And we don't do that as a society because I'm just too busy. I don't have time for that. And you do, like, because you're busy, but you're not productive. If you're anything like me, you're really, really busy. That doesn't mean you're getting a lot of things done. And I'm so busy. I don't have time to reflect. It's like you watch 2 hours of Netflix a night. You scroll through an hour a day of Instagram. And I'm not, and don't hear any of that as shame, friends. Like if you're listening, that's not shame. Like I think Tracy and I had a conversation recently. Like you probably, if you feel a little like tinge, like that's called conviction because the truth is convicting. It's not shame or judgment. It's like, oh man, I do have time. If you will choose to value yourself enough to make that time for you, because it's not selfish. Like you working on your mindset, on your purpose is not selfish. In fact, I'd argue the opposite. It may be the best thing you can do for yourself and those around you, because then it allows you to show up at your best.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you do flows out of your own health, and you're the only person that can fight for that. You know, if you don't prioritize it, don't expect anybody else to. You know, they'll care for you when you fall down and are a mess in the corner, but don't expect them to set you up for a healthy mindset. That's on all of us. We have to take the initiative to do it. And I loved what you said. When you do get clarity and focus, it's going to get harder. One of my teammates, just an exceptional mindset. And he'd always say, you know, if they don't let you in the front door, if you can't match them toe to toe, then figure it out. Sneak in the back door. Like, don't give up. Just keep moving. Do something. Figure it out, because there will be a way for those who stay tenacious, for people who just refuse to lose and don't quit. You know, it is so important that we stay after that and don't give up when adversity comes, but that we do prioritize and we spend the time. I know for some people, it can be scary to do that self-reflection.
Yep.
I encourage you. That might be the place where you need to step up to the plate and be brave. Take a look at your life. Be honest. That was hard for me. You know, I just like to gloss it over and, oh, you know, it's fine. But when you actually look at what are the barriers that you're putting in your way, and often they're self-imposed.
That's right. Yep.
It's sobering, but it is necessary if you really want to experience breakthrough and have healthy mindset. You know, we have to do the work. We have to go there first.
And if it's scary, it's good. Lean into that. Right? It's scary for a reason. Like that's where the magic happens. Like that's where we actually figure out who we are, what we're capable of. Alexis, you're right. Amazing book on busyness, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Highly recommend that one as well. But I think it's another huge piece of like, and it's whether it's mindset, whether it's leadership, like it's hard. Like, so none of what we're saying is easy. But it's the result of being intentional and showing up and saying, I know it's hard. I know it's scary. I don't want to wrestle with my own thoughts because I'm not sure what I'm going to find in there. But when you do, you'll realize like there's some gold in there, and you'll realize you're the one holding yourself back. You are your biggest obstacle. You are your biggest critic. And when you can battle and wrestle with that and realize like, wait a minute, no, I have ownership. This is all like because you said this earlier, like we blame so many other people for our unhealthy situation or our unhealthy mindset. Right. It's like, you know, we had our kid. So I told this story in my daily email today, but my almost 12-year-old, they lost their basketball game on Saturday by like 4 points. Close game, tense game. They should have won by 10. And the officiating was terrible. I'm not an officials blamer, but it was terrible. And they shot like 22 free throws. We shot like 5. And so our team was really frustrated with the officiating, and rightfully so. But the coach said, guys, like, yeah, the officiating wasn't great. But number one, it wasn't they were bad calls. They were missed calls. We felt like the fouls that we committed, they were absolutely fouls. The other team just didn't get called for any. And so our coach said, guys, great. But the officials, the bad calls didn't make you commit 12 turnovers or whatever the number was. The officiating didn't cause you to miss 4 layups. The officiating didn't cause you to miss the free throws that you did have. The officiating didn't cause you to not get rebounds. Like, so we can blame everybody else for the outcomes, or we say, wait a minute, even with bad officiating, even with a bad boss, even with whatever, you get to control how you show up. Nobody gets ownership of that but you. And so when you stop blaming and say, wait a minute, the power of mindset is me. When that switch flips, like it's like a light bulb comes on and everything changes. Like, wait a minute, my perspective is my perspective. I get to own that. I get to control that. And so to be able to show up every day with that mindset of whatever comes at me, it's going to be hard. Right. I'm not going to expect to have great days all the time because life is hard. And there's 7 billion people out there moving their own direction and we're going to bump into each other, but I can control how I show up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really is like, God, give me the grace to accept the things I can't control, you know, the courage to do something about the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And when we walk that way, it's like, we have purpose. We're able to not stay paralyzed because there are so many things out of our control. But when you actually look at a daily basis and just say, what can I do today? What can I affect? There are going to be things that aren't fair. My last thing is, I think healthy mindset comes with looking at, okay, this is right, this is wrong, but this is what is. We spend a lot of time trying to fight for, but this is what was fair. This is what I should have. The faster we get to what is and start working out of reality, the sooner we see outcomes that really set us up for success and, for our lives to really be liberating to other people that we're coming in contact with. So.
Absolutely.
Hi,
I love it.
Yeah, this is great. Wow. As I'm watching all the chats going on our different avenues where people are tuning in, I'm thinking, garbage in, garbage out, healthy things in, healthy things out. I'm seeing people recommending books, and it's obvious that people who are digesting healthy get healthy, right? And I see that in your life, both of you. I had a quick personal question because I think we've answered all the questions here that we've gotten, but I know the answer to this, I think, but I know you pour this healthy mindset into your children. Are there intentional ways you're doing that?
I think with my kids, I've had to realize they're both very different in how they're wired. I have a 16-year-old daughter who's, if you follow GiANT, she's a creative pioneer, and my son is a connector nurturer. So very different in the way they're both wired. But what I have found is taking time with both of them intentionally in the way that works for them. So my daughter and I, we go running together, we go for walks together, and I make sure that I'm just in tune with her actually expressing how she's feeling, knowing, and that's where I love GiANT. Our tools come in so handy because you can really see what happens to a creative pioneer under stress and pressure. Well, it is hallmark of what happens to my daughter. So I know, oh gosh, she might not be telling me, but I'm seeing the evidence of the stress in her life, and I need to take some time, lean in, and help her just have some lifelines so that she can kind of alleviate that. My son, he wears his heart on his sleeve, so I know 24 hours a day, there's no mystery. I know how he's doing. Good, bad, good mood, bad mood, school pressure, school going great. And so for him, it's a different strategy. And I think that's been, mentor of mine just said, treat your children as individuals. This isn't a group sport. You really need to be in tune with them, get to know them, become an expert in their personalities, watch them. And so it takes time, I think. But overall, to answer your question, Tracy, really just staying in tune, watching them, looking for their patterns, and noticing when I need to lean in, and then giving them the space. It's a balance with teenagers. You got to be there, and you got to give them their space. And you have to balance it differently every day. So I think that's what I'm learning.
That's great. Well, I know you have an intentional transfer of a healthy mindset to everyone that you come in contact with. That's why we love you. That's one of the many reasons we love you so much. So once again, everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time out of your busy week to be with us. And I hope this really gets you set for a fantastic week. And so, Suzi, thank you. I know you're busy. I would like to tell everyone that if you want to connect with Suzi, she would love that. First of all, you can connect with her via our platform, the GiANT platform, just by going to giant.tv and put her name after a / and that will connect you. And she'd love to do a boot camp with you or just meet with you. Your email, Suzi, is just suzi.lantz@giantworldwide.com, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, so connect with her if you'd like. I know she'd love it. Kevin, thank you again, as always. Great to be amongst great, healthy minds here. So thanks, everyone. We will hopefully see you next Monday, same time, same place.